What is up, Knicks fans? Welcome back to yet another episode of Fireside Knicks with your hosts Dylan and Davin. And last night, the New York Knicks, there's no point in sugarcoating it. It was an awful loss. They lost 132 to 109 to the Boston Celtics on their rig night on their home floor. Like I said, we can't sugarcoat it. It was a terrible loss. But the Celtics also had a historic shooting night, and when you shoot the ball as well as they did, it's going to be hard to win games, right? So, we're just going to dive right into the game. There are some good things we could take away from it, but obviously most of the stuff is not very good. I think some of the biggest storylines are very negative, so we're just going to jump into it. Davin, tell me first off how you're doing, and secondly, what are some of your biggest takeaways from the opening night loss?
Doing great, Dylan, man. Thank you for asking. And yeah, quite honestly, losing by 23, down 35. At one point, it looked pedestrian. The New York Knicks looked pedestrian. A lot to note going forward, but the biggest takeaway I have as far as a positive would be Miles McBride. Miles McBride definitely looks better than he did last season. 22 points with 80% from the field. He might be the only role player that maximizes role in the time allocated to him. You love to see that, right? You love to see that. You wish it was a trickle-down effect, but there shouldn't be a trickle-down effect from Miles McBride. It should be from Jalen Brunson, and that's someone else I want to mention. Jalen Brunson, a decent outing. You know what I mean? I was like, pedestrian kind of outing exactly. He played three quarters, 22 points. At the same time, he's the captain. He's the leader. Yeah, GMs voted him, I believe it was fourth best leader amongst players, and I'm going to be quite honest with you, for it to be opening night in the TD Garden, with the level of magnitude that game has, and we won't see the Celtics for 50 more games. You would have thought the guys were more up for that. I can understand it's a new group. We understand preseason to preseason, but as well, you guys have preseason and practice to get together. And for some reason, from out of the gate, you could tell these guys just weren't into it. You know what I mean? First quarter, the tone was not set. Cat tried to set the tone when no one else was setting the tone. Jalen Brunson was starting off pretty well, but he was just doing his own thing, not really making sure these other guys are getting themselves prepared. But what do you take from this? I won't just take the whole entire time right now, but what do you take from quick takeaways?
Right. I agree with the thing that they didn't seem prepared. They definitely didn't look prepared at all. I mean, I don't think anyone could necessarily prepare for a team to shoot 29 three-pointers and make those. I don't think that can exactly be something you can plan to happen, because it literally has only happened one other time in league history. So I get it. Sometimes a team just gets hot and they just light you up and you just have no standing chance. Because if you look at the numbers, the Knicks did shoot the ball well. They shot 55% from the floor. They shot the ball exceptionally well, actually. But Boston just couldn't miss from three. And ultimately, that was the demise, right? I mean, the Knicks were down by 20 for most of this game. So that should just tell you right there how unstoppable it was to really contain Boston. Some of the things that really struck me, though, was the rotations on defense. A lot of times they were just getting really slow to get back to shooters open for threes, and they know that that's what the Celtics wanted. They know that they were going to try to kill them with threes, and they were just beating them every single time, getting those mismatches off the screens, slow to recover on rotations. And one other thing, too, I don't know why OG Anunoby wasn't guarding Jason Tatum. Mikal Bridges had nothing for him. Nothing. I mean, I'll get into his offensive issues, of course, and I'm not going to rip Bridges totally because he did have an improved second half, but it was against mostly reserves, so I'm not going to go too deep into that, but that's besides the point. On the defensive side, OG Anunoby should have been on Jason Tatum. I don't know why he wasn't. I understand when you have Bridges and Anunoby, you kind of have flexibility to kind of pick and choose which one is the better matchup for, a team's two best players. But OG Anunoby would have been the better choice, because there were a couple of plays early on in the game where OG was on Tatum, and he shut him down. He made him take some really tough shots, and I think most of his misses came in that sequence, because then after that, Bridges started guarding Tatum primarily, and Tatum was just giving him buckets left and right. Now, of course, credit to Jason Tatum. He is a very good player. He's going to be an MVP candidate this season probably at this point. 37 points, 8 three-pointers on the night. I mean, it was a great night for Jason Tatum. It was the one that he needed to have on the ring night and stuff, considering he didn't win the Finals MVP and all that. So, credit to him, of course. But the Knicks had the opportunity to prevent that from happening. They did. We know this team is capable of stopping teams from being able to light you up like that. And considering the Celtics kind of just made the Knicks look really like baby food out there, it was a little disappointing. Now, of course, it's just game one of the season. It's not game, 67. It's not game 82. We're not in a playoff crunch right now or anything. It's game one. Not going to overreact. This loss at the end of the day is the same as if we lost by one. At the end of the day, it counts the same way. So I'm not going to overreact, but there are clearly some things that need to be worked on. And it's also clear that the gap between the Knicks and Celtics is still a little bit wide. I think the Knicks still have a lot to prove. But again, it is a brand new team. I'm not going to make an excuse for the Knicks. It is a brand new team. You have two completely new rotation players in your starting five with Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns. I understand the chemistry's not there yet. It's not. They've only been together for less than 3 weeks at this point. I understand, I get the argument of, oh, you had the preseason and some practices to get some energy and stuff like that and get the chemistry. Yes, but I don't think that's enough time. I think these guys need to be able to gel together and really kind of understand their roles in a game setting. And they only had 5 preseason games to be able to do that, so it takes time. There's clearly some questions about where some guys belong in the rotation, which we're also going to get into, especially with like Josh Hart and Miles McBride, particularly those two players. But other than that, I'm just hoping when we go back home and face Indiana on Friday that they have a better look defensively. I think that's really the big thing because offensively they looked fine. Like, yeah, you didn't have any players really have like an explosive scoring game, but the numbers don't lie. They shot the ball well. They took good shots. They just couldn't stop Boston defensively. That was where the issues came. Boston lit them up from three all night, from the moment the game tipped off to the moment the game finished. Well, I guess technically not till the moment the game finished because they missed the last 13 threes trying to get that record, but that was all the reserves. So I'm not really counting that part. But other than that, I just want to see better defensive effort from these guys. That's really my main takeaway from it. What do you think about that, though? I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, like you said, when you said initially, 29 threes, you can't prepare for that, right? But at the same time, I believe that they're, like, the Celtics are the highest scoring team last season. You knew that was the case. Like we talked about, Anunoby should have been on Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum should have been more contained. At the same time, the Knicks kind of checked out after halftime. And I believe when I was watching their body language, the way people were moving after halftime was very lackadaisical on the floor. To go down 35 points at all against this team, we won't see, like I said, we won't see them again for 50 games. So when we understand, like I said, Brunson's the captain and everything. We have a coach also as well. So someone didn't get these guys up and on their Wheaties this morning. That's all that was about. Because let's be honest, if you know the magnitude, I'm not the only one who knew the magnitude. You're not the only one either. So it's like 50 games to win on these guys. And to go out like the way you did, knowing how the narratives go, how media goes, how Josh Hart's quote's going to get taken away, like he doesn't know his role. We're going to talk about that more. Because in my opinion, he's played himself out of a role in a way because the way the Celtics played him, the defense was putting a center on him and allowing everyone else to kind of get guarded by more perimeter players. And that's why you have Xavier Tillman guarding Josh Hart. Because why? Because Josh Hart's not going to do anything. So I would definitely be on the conversation to get Miles McBride starting minutes because let's be quite honest, you have to guard Miles McBride. We saw Drew Holiday clamping up Karl Anthony Towns in the first quarter, but then you come around and see him try to be on Miles McBride, and that's not the same sequence. Miles McBride was getting his work in. And that's something I definitely noticed when I said about setting the tone. If Cat couldn't set the tone on Drew Holiday, I'm not going to talk too much about Cat in the first quarter there, but that's what the trouble was. It was trouble in paradise from the beginning. That's really what it was. So, yeah, poor defense, giving up 29 threes on 47%. If they would have played that defense they played in the fourth quarter when they were trying to make their record, then we would have a different conversation here because, geez, they were obviously playing some defense, so they wouldn't get the record on them. So I guess I can be confident about that. You guys didn't allow Boston to shoot 33s on you. Congratulations. That's just exactly what we can take away from that. But yeah, Bridges jumper disgusting until the second half. That's okay. We got to work on that. But I believe he's a hard worker. Josh Hart, that was a good quote from Josh Hart. You could say stupid if you want to, sure, but at the same time, we can say JG your jump shot when you're chasing the championship is pretty stupid. So, you can look at that either way. But yeah, Josh Hart saying that we do know Mikhail's a hard worker. No one's taking that away from him. But we do understand this is the NBA. We understand this is the highest level of basketball played. And to take such a drastic step as changing your jumper, that's definitely, that's a choice. That's a choice to make. That is definitely a choice to make. But like I said, Tibbs broke some tradition. We saw some young guys that I believe that they will see the floor this year. I believe we will see some young guys. And of course, they saw the young guys. They didn't play the fourth quarter. They're down 30, sure. But in the past, that would have been a collection of Taj Gibson, Marcus Morris, Cameron. Like that collection of players would have been different. And this guys, I'm glad to see that Dottie Yad, we saw Tyler Kolek, we saw Porte, everyone got just a run on the floor. I know Tyler Kolek scored his first three, so did Pacome. So it's like, man, just to give these guys even a feeling of an NBA game, I believe Tom Thibodeau has something for us as far as giving guys opportunities because, like you said, we saw the people guarding Jason Tatum. After a while, it was Mikal Bridges, and at times Jericho Sims is getting dropped off by Jason Tatum. And I could not believe what I was seeing when I saw that. I was like, this is just this is diabolical hoops right now, man. I know he's right there, man. You got Jericho Sims face guarding Jason Tatum. Like, this guy. But yeah, it's just going to break tradition a little bit. I'm looking forward to what Tibbs has in store. I'm looking forward to the adjustments made on Friday. But I cannot emphasize enough. It does not matter to the national media or the media, circuits that exist until we beat the Boston Celtics in 50 games. The narrative will be the same. You don't lose. If we would have lost a close game yesterday, different conversation. But if you lose by 23 points down near 40, guys, no one's going to take you serious, and it's okay. I don't care who you have on this roster. So that's just kind of the way I see it. But how about you?
Yeah, I wanted to get to your Jericho Sims point because I was going to actually talk about him, so I'm glad you mentioned him. I don't
Yeah.
understand why he was the first guy off the bench. I don't. I honestly don't. You obviously know me personally. I'm not very high on Sims whatsoever. Not. I don't think that this guy. I understand he has potential because he's got some of the tools to be a good player, but he has never shown it to me really ever in his first 3 NBA seasons, and he's had 32 starts in his career, so it's not like he hasn't had the opportunity to do that because he's gotten plenty of opportunities thanks to Mitchell Robinson's health, which is another point I want to get into. They were really missing Mitchell Robinson yesterday. They were really missing him. They had, I think, one offensive rebound in the first quarter, and they got killed on the offensive rebounds altogether. So that right there should just tell you how much they're missing Mitchell Robinson right now. Not only just for his defense, of course, but the offensive rebounding, like I just said. Obviously Robinson is not a scoring threat, but he's impactful offensively because of those rebounds. He gives the Knicks second chance opportunities and gives them opportunities to score more. And sure, the Knicks shot the ball well, but they needed that presence down there. They had no center depth behind Towns. You had Jericho Sims, as you just said, guarding Jason Tatum. Like, what are we doing? Seriously. Like, I don't understand what the idea was behind having Sims be the first guy off the bench, too. I think the whole idea was, oh, we need rebounding, so that's why we're going to have Sims come off the bench first. That's just a bad idea. It's bad. It's not a good idea whatsoever. It's unfortunate, but you have to be able to trust to play Towns way more often than you really want to at the moment because you don't have center depth at the moment. You're missing Precious Achua for at least the next few weeks. You don't have Mitchell Robinson, as I just said. So your next centers are Sims and Huckporty, which, obviously I've vouched for Huckporty to play over Sims, but that doesn't mean I want Huckporty playing 20 minutes or anything like that. I just don't trust Jericho Sims enough. I don't. And the fact that he was the first guy off the bench kind of confused me from the jump, and then seeing how it played out on the court, it's exactly why I was very upset about it. Because once Sims came in the game, that's really when it fell apart. I'm not saying Sims is the reason why we lost the game. No, there are a myriad of reasons why we lost the game. But once Sims checked in and the spacing was gone, they had nothing. They couldn't stop. They couldn't score, and then they couldn't stop him on defense. So that's when the game really fell apart. Because all of a sudden, a 7-point game turned into a 21-point game at the end of the first quarter. So that's really what I got to say about that. But, I do want to talk about some good things because, Miles McBride was very, very good yesterday. Very good. I was really impressed. He was, as you said earlier in this show, he was just probably the only Knick really that really stepped up when he needed to. Like, Jalen Brunson had a good game, yeah, sure. And Mikal Bridges had a solid second half, sure. But Miles McBride was on point from start to finish. He looked like he looked like he was out there and looked prepared. 22 points, 8 of 10 from the floor, 4 of 5 from 3. He was the team's best player yesterday. He was.
Yeah.
He was the team's best player, and he was their best scorer all night, really. And, I think that really elevates the conversation now about whether or not he should be in the starting 5. Because we know Josh Hart is basically uninvolved completely offensively, and as you said, Xavier Tillman is guarding Josh Hart, possessions like that. So, I think my next question I want to kind of segue into, do you think Thibodeau will make the adjustment next game to where he shakes up the lineup and puts McBride in the starting 5, or do you think he's going to stick with Josh Hart for the next game against Indiana? I really want to hear what you think about that.
Quite honestly, just because the NBA politics are in play, I believe Josh Hart will be starting in Indiana. I think it'd be a sample size kind of thing. 10 games or so they'll kind of go before they adjust the starting 5. McBride's going to go ahead and go on a tear. I believe McBride's going to be good. He's going to be going out after 15 for the next 10 games, something like that. And when that's happening, he's undeniable at that point. He can create his own shot. He's a decent enough playmaker besides Jalen Brunson. And let's say he's not the tallest guy, but Josh Hart is not either. Of course, you're going to give up rebounding, but it's not like they were getting hell of rebounds yesterday. They weren't even going crazy. I think 5 offensive boards, and they averaged number 1 in offensive boards last year. So that was a great point you made about the lack of Mitchell Robinson because, yeah, Mitchell Robinson, he's not going to, fix, let's say, these guys shooting 33s, but at the same time, we're going to get more shots to shoot threes as well. We'll get more opportunities. Like, we were lacking in that completely as far as threes attempted as well. So it's like, little situations like that, I could definitely see where Miles McBride would be better in the starting five as compared to, say, Josh Hart, where he can go ahead and operate that second unit. And he'll be also flexing minutes from Mikal Bridges. We saw Mikal Bridges run with the bench unit. We saw OG Anunoby run with the bench unit. So things like that, I definitely could see him kind of balance that more and, run with the starters sometimes when needed. But I do not believe he should be running 30 minutes with starters after, let's say, McBride continues to prove himself. He continues to get better and better, and that's kind of just what I expect to see from McBride. And that's kind of where it's going to go. Yeah, I don't think he'll be giving up the starting spot next game because Thibodeau has a tendency to kind of keep things on the flow. But after, say, a 10-game, 12-game stretch of McBride just being prolific, he has to be a starting shooting guard at that point. I believe Jalen Brunson and McBride backcourt as hooping, man. That's going to be hard to stop. Hard to stop.
No, I don't disagree. And, Thibodeau, as you mentioned, he kind of has a bit of a stubbornness when it comes to his rotations. He runs very, like, strict linear rotations. He runs
Yeah.
these rotations specifically. He doesn't like really to mix things up or kind of change things up unless he has no choice, unless, like, an injury or something proposes that. So otherwise, I agree. I don't expect Josh Hart to be demoted to the bench after just one game. I do think he's going to end up starting. They're going to try to see if they can make it work. Josh Hart did score 12 points yesterday, which is kind of intriguing, but, it doesn't mean he was necessarily a threat offensively because he wasn't exactly, like, willing to score. He was kind of just getting his looks towards the end of the shot clock where, you kind of had to get somebody to get a shot up, and he would get a shot up. So I do think at some point, though, that Miles McBride can earn that starting spot. I do. And it could be very soon, as you said. It could be within the next 10 to 12 games, maybe even sooner than that if the Knicks are really struggling to start the year. I'm not going to overreact over one game, of course, like I said, because at the end of the day, a loss is a loss, and it was going to be tough to beat the reigning champions who brought their entire team back on their ring night, so with a little extra motivation, it was going to be tough to do that no matter what. Even if it was a close game, it was going to be tough to beat them. Right? And they're always going to be tough to beat. The Celtics are going to remain as the favorites pretty much every year until the Knicks prove something, like you said. Until the Knicks prove that they can beat this team consistently, and pretty handily, then everyone's going to have the Celtics above them. And rightfully so. They deserve it. The Celtics won the championship last year. So that's just how it is, But in terms of McBride getting that starting spot, I think he can get it very soon. I really do. I don't know exactly when that'll be, but I'm really hoping that it becomes soon because I think he can really help this team, enhance the spacing. And this is somebody who was saying earlier, just a few weeks ago, that Josh Hart should keep starting. I was saying that. I will admit that I was wrong about it. And that, honestly, at this point, Miles McBride should be starting. As much as I think Hart is impactful for all the other little things, such as the rebounding, the playmaking, the hustle, the energy, all that stuff, he's just not a threat offensively enough to be out there with the rest of the guys because we just saw how it unfolded. And I'm pretty sure there was a stretch where Sims and Hart were on the floor together. So you have two non-factors offensively on the floor together at once? That's a recipe for disaster. I'm sorry. And that's exactly when the game fell apart. So there's a lot of different things that can be made. Obviously, saying that they need to shake things up after one game can sound very dramatic, but at the same time, this team does have high expectations, and if they got punched in the mouth like that against Boston, the team that they're supposed to be able to really compete with, then there's clearly some things that need to be adjusted at some point. Maybe it doesn't have to happen right now, but maybe at some point down the road later on in the season, maybe those adjustments will need to be necessary. Now, I will say this, at the end of the day, I'd rather get punched in the mouth in Game 1 than in Game 82. If you get absolutely thrashed like that in your first game, it's kind of a wake-up call to you. It's a wake-up call. Like, hey, we're not perfect yet. We don't have the chemistry. We don't have the synergy yet to really compete with this team as much as we want to. We don't have it yet. So, hopefully that wakes them up and kind of tells them, like, hey, we need to really get these things going, get everything going, fix all this stuff, fix the shooting woes, or anything that the defensive problems, especially anything that was really like tripping them up against Boston. Hopefully they can fix it up against Indiana. I don't really have much else to say, though, about this game. Obviously, it was a very ugly loss. I mean, ugly is kind of an understatement, down by 40 on opening night. I mean, I don't think anyone envisioned that. I don't know if anyone necessarily envisioned that we were gonna dominate, but I don't think anyone thought we would get punched by 40 either. So before we do wrap this up, though, I want to give you an opportunity to get your final thoughts out on this game, of course, but also looking ahead towards Indiana on Friday.
Yeah, final thoughts, man. Shout out Jalen Brunson again. His influence is integral to the Knicks' success. It really is. And I'm really big on leadership. I'm really big on what he brings. Night one is night one. Oh, I will take that as game one. But when the Pacers that just put you out the playoffs come to the Garden, I'm going to need you to put on eat your Wheaties that morning. I'm going to need you to be ready and prepared. And I know Jalen Brunson will be. I'm looking forward to the masterclass that he displays against the smaller guys in Indiana compared to, let's say, Boston. But yeah, his leadership is got to be top notch, man. I want these guys all to be running behind what Brunson says. A little different than last year. You don't have Julius Randle, he's not here to be like a co-captain kind of thing, but you're the captain, man. This is your team. This is your ship. They go where you go, and you have to bleed that energy. I don't care if it's how you play, how you talk. Something has to give the screaming factor that you're here to play. Like we saw the game last night after this Anthony Edwards and versus the Lakers. That game they lost against the Lakers, but Anthony Edwards very vocal on the court, very much aggressor on the court. It doesn't matter what's happening. He's going to make sure he's getting his point across. He's going to make sure these people are seeing and feeling him. And that's the kind of energy that you always want from a leader. And he's a very young guy. So things like that, Jalen Brunson could be just a little more expressive about, just to hype the guys up, hype the garden up when it comes to happening. It's a Friday night.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. The Knicks need to have a little bit of extra motivation Friday because they're facing the team that knocked them out of the playoffs, and it's going to be at Madison Square Garden, the same place that happened at. So hopefully the Knicks come out with better energy. Hopefully Jalen Brunson, as you said, can lead these guys to come up with a better game plan because clearly things were off against Boston. I don't know what it was. I don't know if they had a bad bus ride or something like that, or if they just weren't ready for Boston. Whichever one it was, something was clearly off. But the best thing we can do now is kind of just put this game in the rearview mirror and look ahead because at the end of the day, it is just one game. It is the first game. Being 0-1 is not fun, but being 0-1 is better than being under 500 later on in the season. So we'll just take it up with the chin and just go from there with it. But guys, we really hope you enjoyed this episode. Let us know what you guys say about this game in the comments section below. Obviously there's a lot of different talking points to talk about, so we'd love to hear it. You can follow us on all of our social media platforms, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, of course this YouTube page that you are watching the video on. You can follow our personal Twitter accounts. They are above our heads. And we will see you guys in the next episode of Fireside Knicks. Peace out.